The media says a border wall won't stop drugs from coming in to the country.
So the fact is, the majority of hard drugs seized by Customs and Border Protection come through ports of entry. A wall would not stop that.
The president says a wall will stop the drugs, the heroin, the fentanyl, the other opioids. Most of the drugs, his own government says, come in through legal points of entry, where there's commerce, where there's crossing. A wall will not block the legal points of entry.
But the point is that most of it is coming in deep concealment through legal ports of entry.
A wall would do nothing about any of that if that's how it's coming in.
So is that true? Let's ask John Walters, former drug czar under George W. Bush and the COO of the Hudson Institute. John, thanks for being here this morning. So the critique is you can close the border with walls, but the drugs are still going to come in through legal ports of entry. Your response?
Well, it's kind of a stupid analysis if you think about what's really going on. The problem is we have 2,000 miles of border, and we have too many people on guard duty and not enough people screening at the ports of entry. Yes, those are the entries, but we have to guard all this space between. The wall is a fixed barrier that channels the flow into fixed and controlled areas where you can screen and analyze what's happening and stop the drugs. It's kind of silly. It's kind of, I guess, it's politically inspired stupidity. But it's ludicrous to say that the wall won't allow us to focus our manpower on the places where we can control and search.
Thank you for saying that. It's stupid analysis. You're exact. Sometimes as stupid is as stupid does. So if you didn't have to allocate the resources to the portions of the border that are wide open right now, what more things could you do at these ports of entry to prevent drugs from coming in?
Well, first, you want to kind of have more people to do analysis of what kinds of methods are being used, about the networks, the communication of networks.
So intelligence, yeah.
Yeah, and then you want to screen. You need to do more intense screening, and you need to be able to kind of pull things into secondary. You need to lengthen the screening area. We have laws that allow us to go back into the country and stop trucks and so forth, even after the port of entry, but you want to stop these at the port of entry. I mean, the other big stupid lie here is that there isn't a crisis. I mean, since the beginning of the Obama administration alone, hundreds of thousands of people have died of overdoses. This is a historic carnage, 70,000 in 2017, more than all the deaths in the Vietnam War. For people to, I mean, people wonder why some Americans are angry. When political leaders say this is a manufactured crisis, that is infuriating to families and communities that are being destroyed. It's like, what? You don't get it? You live in Washington and you live in La La Land? I mean, this is really a challenge to the political leadership of the country to face the challenge at the border that is murdering people in large numbers through these poisons.
Are Democrats choosing to ignore this crisis, or do they think it's politically expedient to do so?
I think the politics over this have now eclipsed the responsibilities of elected leaders. And I also think that there has been a failure to come to grips with this. The Obama administration started this. He didn't want to focus on the border. He didn't want to focus on drug enforcement. And we have the largest loss of life from drug overdoses. And that doesn't even cover the people who are being addicted in the tens of thousands.
Sure.
And he let this get out of control. Then he's legalizing marijuana. We have a new book out by Alex Berenson talking about the link between crime and addiction and violence and serious mental illness. All this stuff was swept under the rug for over 8 years, and now the consequences are coming back to destroy huge communities in America.
Yeah, it's no good. John Walters, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, Peter.
All right.
We have 55 miles of fencing in this sector. We started a job in 2006. We need to finish that job. We've got the personnel, we need the technology, we need the resources, we need the infrastructure in order to control this border and manage it. Part of our area is covered with some fencing on our east side. That accounts for about 6% of our traffic. Where we have no fencing, over 90% of our traffic occurs in those areas.
All right, a lot of Border Patrol agents are directly affected by this ongoing border, kerfuffle here, and a lot of them are not getting paid, but they feel so passionately about it. They think that the president should get it what he wants, even if it means in the interim they're going to be in a world of financial hurt. Former U.S. Border Patrol chief under Barack Obama agrees with the president's approach on this. Mark Morgan joins us right now. Sir, very good to have you.
Thank you.
You feel that the president's onto something here, right?
Absolutely. I agree 100% with what the president is trying to do with all things related to border security. It is absolutely 100%, in my opinion, and this isn't based on some political ideology. Neil, this is based on 30 years of governmental service. This is based on walking some of the same ground that you saw the president working, talking to the ranchers, talking to the landowners, talking to United States Border Patrol agents who risk their lives every single day doing that. And I'm telling you, this is absolutely a national security and humanitarian crisis along the southwest border.
What did you make of the fact that it's a non-starter for some of the very same Democrats who approved billions of dollars of wall building and improving and reinforcing during certainly the Barack Obama years? So what happened?
Exactly. And I'm hoping that the American people, that is not lost on the American people. In 2006, as you've reported, the Secure Fence Act, if people go back, I strongly encourage people to look it up. Get on the internet and look it up, and you will see the same things that are being said by our president today. The same language was being used by former presidents, by former politicians on both sides of the aisle, saying that we needed a fence, that we needed a wall, a physical barrier, whatever you want to call it. They approved it then, and they were saying the same language back in 2006 that the current president is saying now to secure our borders. It's absurd, the arguments that are being made right now.
So, Mr. Morgan, let me ask you something. The president has just tweeted on this subject. The Democrats could solve the shutdown in 15 minutes. He urges, call your Dem senator or congressman or woman, tell them to get it done. It's a humanitarian crisis. You essentially agree?
100%. In fact, Neil, when I was chief of the Border Patrol, one of the first things that I saw was what I referred to as a humanitarian crisis. And what's ironic about that, it started in 2014 when we saw the demographics of those coming across our southern borders change, meaning we saw an influx in family units and unaccompanied minors. And it was then also across the aisle on both sides that referred to this as a humanitarian crisis. It was then, and it still is now. We have a dual-headed issue there, both on the national security side, but also on the humanitarian side. He's absolutely correct.
So let me ask you this. When you were working under the Obama administration, was there ever any pressure when it came to a wall or something like that on putting money toward a physical structure? Or did they look at alternatives, either technology, electronic fencing, drones, that kind of stuff?
Neil, that's a great question. And what I could say is, if you go to the men and women of the United States Border Patrol, if you go to, overall the Customs and Border Protection on both sides of the House of Leadership, go to Kevin McAleenan right now, who is leading as a commissioner of CBP, who is an intelligent man and a patriot. Nothing has changed, Neil. The strategy that they put forth a long time ago of infrastructure, technology, and personnel, that multi-layered approach, that's what it's been since the beginning, and that's what it is still today. And the reason why is because that multi-layered approach, including the wall, works. And what I would like to say is some people will mention, well, why don't we just use technology? Well, how about we just get additional personnel? Well, those things work, but in and of themselves, it doesn't solve the problem. So what I've been trying to tell people is we need to do it all, including the wall.
All right. We'll watch very closely. Mark Morgan, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The government shutdown is now entering its fourth week, and neither side has moved much. The president has been arguing for the past 3 years that the United States needs a wall on its southern border. Agree with his positions or not, Trump has explained why he believes that repeatedly and in great detail, most recently in a live address to the country. Democrats, meanwhile, have argued the opposite. America should not have a border wall, they've said again and again. But the difference is they really haven't explained why. At various times, Democratic leaders have told us that walls don't work, walls are racist, walls are wasteful, walls are insufficient, walls are excessive, and walls are too old-fashioned. Walls are either medieval or ancient, depending upon who's reading the talking point at the time. Some of these arguments are semi-real, others are transparently fake. Still others flatly contradict one another. Rhetorically, the Democratic case against walls has been a mess from the beginning. At one point, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tried to bring order to the chaos by flatly declaring that walls are immoral. She said that repeatedly with the force of a religious edict, which in effect it was. But in the end, the theology of it all was just too complex. It seemed to confuse people. How can walls be immoral if a lot of those who oppose walls have walls around their own homes? That was a tough case to make, even for a persistent faith leader like Nancy Pelosi. Finally, Pelosi just gave up. Yesterday, she accepted the inevitability of a border wall. But here's the catch, the hidden trap door in the space-time continuum that Pelosi is famous for in Washington. Yes, Democrats now support a border wall, but no, it's not the kind of wall you had in mind, the kind of wall you can touch or the kind of wall that might keep unwanted people out of your country. It is instead a digital wall. It's a massive, invisible edifice constructed entirely of virtual ones and zeros that reside in some Amazon server farm somewhere in suburban Virginia. It is the wall of the future, in other words, a wall that Google might build and probably will. Pelosi calls it a technological wall.
We are proposing is to build the infrastructure of the ports of entry, strengthen that, the ports of entry, spend the money, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, but accessible to have the scanning technology to scan cars coming through for drugs, contraband of any kind, weapons even. Repair the roads, facilitate immigration and trade in those regions. The positive, shall we say, almost technological wall that can be built is what we should be doing.
Of course, a technological wall. Why didn't we think of that? But wait, you say, aren't all walls technological walls? The only difference, of course, is in the kind of technology they employ. Well, yes. But before you get hung up on some semantic point, just be grateful that Pelosi is using the W word at all. There was a time not so long ago when she was telling us that a fleet of lawnmowers would be enough to secure the border.
Let's talk about where a more serious structure might be necessary, where fencing will do, where mowing the grass so that people can't be smuggled through the grass.
Well, at a certain point, you begin to wonder if Democrats are really as serious as they say they are about wanting to secure our border. Maybe you've asked yourself that question. Well, wonder no more. They are not interested, officially. Democrats support our immigration crisis, which they will be quick to remind you isn't actually a crisis at all, but part of the poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty. Democrats' main interest is in continuing the status quo, and they want to do that by making certain that no effective barrier is ever built along our southern border. To achieve that, Democrats and their faithful lackeys in the press will say anything, literally anything. Yesterday, to name but one among many examples, Democrat Katie Hill of California, a member of Congress, accused the president of engaging in a form of terrorism for disagreeing with her.
It gets more and more frustrating every single day to see how irrational he is, and we can't accept this anymore. To me, this is political terrorism.
Terrorism! Maybe that's next week's talking point. Check the Sunday shows to see if it makes an appearance there. This week, the phrase was vanity project. The wall, they're telling you, is somehow the president's vanity project, like a remodeled basement rec room or the Clinton Presidential Library. Some consultant thought up that line and emailed it to Pelosi and Schumer, who made certain that every Democrat in Washington included it in virtually every publicly uttered sentence for a period of at least 24 hours, which, of course, they were happy to do, being robots. Watch.
A construction brigade for the president's vanity project.
Doesn't necessarily require our building a vanity project concrete wall.
For one thing, this is a vanity wall.
The president is holding it up because of his vanity project. The president of the United States has a vanity project that he doesn't want to give up.
He's spent on the issues that impact them every day, not on the president's vanity project.
This issue is about a vanity project for this president.
Right. Vanity? Well, that's a new concern in Washington. As it turns out, vanity is actually the main reason the left loves mass immigration in the first place. They let millions of poor people into your country at your expense, but they get to feel like heroes for doing it. It's really the equivalent of forcing a stranger to dump his wallet into the collection plate at gunpoint and then taking the tax deduction for it. It's a pretty great deal if you're the one holding the gun. In fact, you might call it the ultimate vanity project.
And here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As you can see, yes, you can see through these slats to the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. But as we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence.
President Donald Trump won't sign a budget bill that does include $5.7 billion to build part of a wall along the southern border. But he still says Mexico is paying for it.
In fact, what we save on the USMCA, the new trade deal we have with Mexico and Canada, what we save on that just with Mexico will pay for the wall many times over just in a period of a year, 2 years, and 3 years. So I view that as absolutely Mexico is paying for the wall, and that's fine.
So the president is trying to make the case that the U.S. will benefit financially from that new trade deal at Mexico's expense, and that will pay for the wall. But experts who spoke to PolitiFact say it doesn't work like that. The USMCA doesn't add any new tariffs on Mexican goods, and even if it did, and again, it doesn't, the cost and benefit would go to private companies and citizens, not the government. We're still awaiting an official assessment of USMCA's economic impact from the U.S. International Trade Commission, and we couldn't find any early estimates suggesting enough new benefits or savings to pay for the wall, even indirectly. But perhaps the biggest snag for Trump's argument is the USMCA isn't a done deal yet. It still needs approval from Congress before it can go into effect. So, with the USMCA not yet in effect and no official assessment of the economic impact of the deal, Trump's repeated claim that Mexico is still paying for the wall is unsubstantiated.